why do you believe it's essential for organizations to prioritize and invest in transformation and well-being initiatives such as Body and Mind?
Uh, I'll come from again, my current job is D&I, but in previous conversations, I've been a leader that's led businesses more holistically. And I think part of helping people lead is to help them, besides just the business acumen, helping people understand how business is happening, what's happening in the world, how to, you know, sell your skills and products or build skills and products. We do a lot of work around how to help leaders understand themselves in a business context. I think there's a bit of a missing element there that this can help which is how do you understand, um, have a conversation with yourself and kind of remove some stuff that might be in the way and give yourself a space to have, um, both give yourself grace and also help you integrate all the things that are going on in the world and have I call it an O moment. And I have a little bit of a cycle where again, there's a period of sort of stimulus, there's a period of sort of contemplation, there's a period of integration. And then typically out of those things, and I'm not saying they're linear, but like there's an O, like, oh, there's like a shift that I can see. And there are things that help you. I find that there are activities, there are conversations, there are that help you kind of get through that. And I'm trying to sort of figure out how do I, again, as a person who's trying to help people who might not have traditionally shown up in a business environment show up confidently and powerfully. How do I connect those two thoughts and give that sort of talent or that power to people? Because I think it will help the organization when we have a lot of people who are manifesting powerfully, as you say.
Love the manifestation word, which seems to be quite growing in popularity today. Yeah, and in your role, how do you think about that? Where is the opportunity for companies to invest in this type of work?
The skills that it requires to be a powerful leader, again, particularly in the environment that we're in now, where so many of the rules of business are kind of being sort of blown up. And I think if you kind of just step back and think about coming out of COVID just by itself, and all the things that sort of changed, and whether it's behavior or the way that tech or how we experience things, there's just a tremendous amount of change that just came out of that itself. And then into like we walked into this age where AI shows up, and we're having this whole return to work discussion, and the political division and people's concept of the truth. And there's just a lot of sort of, some people would use the word a paradigm shift, but I think there's just a lot, like a fundamental like level change that is happening. And I think and there's also a bit of a trust element, which I've been reading about, where people are talking a lot about how much more people trust the business that they work for. And I'm sourcing the Edelman Trust Barometer study, but they trust the business that they work for, the CEO that they work for, and the people that they work with more than they trust the government or media. Okay. And so into that environment, this place where you spend most of your waking time, there's a high level of trust to sort of help guide you through this tremendous amount of training change, or at least sort of have care for the people that are working for you during that. I think one of the talents that or one of the powers that we need to give our people is one, which is where D&I comes in, is the ability to sort of have an inclusive lens on the world, so that like you are taking advantage and you are thinking about how a bunch of different voices show up in the mix in the work environment is a good thing for the company, and it will help us succeed in the long term. And two, how do we think about how we train our leaders to be kind of comfortable and fully in touch with how they need to show up? Okay. And I think about, like, when I think about DE&I, I think of the intersectionality of all of the people that we're trying to help through DE&I, or that we're trying to bring into the conversation through DE&I, giving them this gift of, again, the ability to comfortably think about how to evolve. I think, again, it makes the playing field, I don't want to say more even, but I think it gives everybody the chance to be comfortable as you kind of walking into this unknown and this chaos and succeeding. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. What are some of maybe sort of the common misconceptions or challenges organizations face when considering the implementation of a corporate transformation or well-being initiative, and how could they overcome those hurdles?
Well, I mean, look, we already, particularly coming out of the COVID situation, we were very much already talking about mental health, and the evolving definition of what that meant. I think we were we've brought in people to talk about mental health and to help people with trauma. But I think sort of beyond that concept, even we could do some work. One way I think we can do some work, and we're talking about doing some work around sort of formalizing a way to understand the impact, and help people sort of manage through or think through the impact of some of the things that are kind of occurring outside of the workplace that kind of show up in the workplace. That's part one. Part two, I think the well-being, or the wellness aspect, where, again, we bring in people like, different businesses do different things, but we bring in yoga folks. We do meditation work, in different aspects, not in a formalized way, but there's lots of that activity happening. I think the packaging of the thought and linking it to, again, an evolutionary conversation with yourself, that helps you become more you, and it helps you deal with some of these things that we're sort of dealing with in an isolated way a little bit more. Um, uh, and I'm talking about this as if I'm thinking about it, talking about me. I find this sort of journey of transformation and a journey to evolve, and it's whether it's um, listening to people, doing activities, having conversations with people, it's of a piece of trying to move somewhere, and show up more as me. And I think that's where I think organizationally, I think it's the thing I haven't quite solidified the idea that's going to help me do it, but it's what I'm working towards, is how do I help the organization recognize and embed in our leadership programs an aspect of this.
Got it. Um, do you feel, it's kind of like a pre-question to my next question, that that these kinds of programs can facilitate competitive advantage in a company?
Yeah, as part of a larger sort of, like, when you have leaders who are, for lack of like I said, I don't love the term powerfully manifesting, but I think who can move confidently and comfortably as them and bring what they have to give to a moment. Again, particularly in this sort of new space where kind of everybody's going like, like, what is the advantage? And I think probably the premier skill, and this is not me this is, people are talking about this, the premier skill in an environment like this is the ability to adapt.
Yes.
Okay. And that what this kind of conversation and this kind of work does is it gives you that. Um, okay. And I think, there's a lot of conversation about what our job is going to be like in a world where AI shows up. And I'm like, you know what? The people who know how to use AI and who know how to adapt are going to be the people who win. And the people who get comfortable in this space where there's so much change all the time, um, are going to be required. You kind of have to be really comfortable with yourself and who you are and how you show up and what you're good at and what you're not good at and where you're going.
Totally agree, but maybe not intuitive for those organizations that are primarily focused on cognitive skill sets and things like this.
Yes, that is exactly. We need to add an element to the equation. Okay. And I was going to show you this, but I'm wearing a shirt that says creative director.
Yes.
I'm not a creative director in my organization, but I think of myself in my life. I'm starting to think of myself as a creative director.
Absolutely. I love it. Love it. Before we go to questions, another one. Do you have a way of measuring the effectiveness and impact of a well-being program? Are there any other KPIs, metrics that you could think of, and so we can track this? Yeah.
Not specifically right now. I will give you a couple of tips in terms of the direction that I'm heading in general, and I'm thinking about this both from an inclusion perspective, as well as from a leadership perspective. First of all, from an inclusion perspective, I think the recipe, thinking about how this work contributes to the expression of our business as a modern, global, connected, inclusive, digitally native organization. Because I think in the world, to be successful now, at a minimum, you kind of have to be seen as that, both externally, from a customer perspective, but also internally. Like your employees, in order to work there, they have to see you as something that is future facing. And inclusion is inherently embedded in anything that is modern and future facing, just like technology or AI is. So part one. And the question becomes is like a little bit of how do you measure that, your ability to show up as that. And I think it's we're less of a situation of counting things. How many Black people are LGBTQ, or like from a representation perspective. And I think it's a little bit more of thinking about what's the recipe look like when you get it right. Do you have salt in the dish? Like it's sort of more of that. And I think this idea, I think both the receptiveness to this idea is a metric, or an OKR, maybe because it's probably not a metric, but is a component of this. How receptive and open to this kind of work are people, and are your leaders engaged in it? And then, like I said, whether they're showing up as, or manifesting, as we say, whether it's benefiting the business in terms of innovation, in terms of attractiveness, in terms of employees wanting to come and stay, or clients coming to you because you think this way and you act this way. That's kind of where I'm generally going. I'm kind of like, okay, what's the literal measurement? I don't have the answer to yet.
Okay, interesting. That's perhaps something we can look at developing as part of this program. I think, if you think about ICOM, you think about measurability, right? And so there's more to life than attribution. So we need to figure out how to measure also this area.